Good morning, everyone. How are you? So you feel you were like, what the hell is a trail dancer? Right? Do you guys know what a trail dancer is? No idea. That's my way of not conforming to trail runner. It's taking the act of, I gotta run, making it a hardship and putting a dance into it. You know, Ram Dass is essentially saying, you dance through life, you take the hardship out. Doesn't mean that there isn't gonna be any hardship out, but when you have that state of mind, it really helps. Bad Brains, hardcore punk band. They have a song, PMA. What does PMA mean? Positive mental attitude. Keeping it positive. Tangent. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you. I'm a bit nervous, but not too nervous because you guys have these great smiles and these attentive eyes. So as I was saying, I'm a self-proclaimed trail dancer, soul recorder, which also means writer. There's a lot of non-conformity here. I don't want to label myself as a writer, but I want to be a soul recorder, and that makes me punk. So we're going to do a very Dharma punk happening here. Oh, it looks like the slides are working. No? Okay. We're going to do a very Dharma punk thing here. And Dharma punk is something that, there we go. We'll work with this for now. Noah Levine kind of coined and wrote a book about Dharma punk. So I would like to invite you to engage in a quick visualization. So close your eyes, please, if you will. Take a deep breath in, holding the intention to create a clean slate in your mind. As you exhale, let go of all preconceived notions about what punk is, what it looks like, sounds like, or even feels like. Just wipe it clean. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes and welcome the energy of the moment. How's that? You guys took it out, all the mohawks, leather, all that stuff, right? So now that we're grounded, let's dive into the concept of punk. According to the Webster Dictionary, there's a lot of unsavory notions about it. You know, you guys can go home and look at what the Webster Dictionary has to say about it, but it's not very nice. So there's a rebellion sentiment, there's a disregard for authority. That only scratches the surface of what punk is. Punk is not merely an aesthetic, nor is it about just the music. It's a profound statement of empowerment and individualism.
I'm just gonna put this here.
Oh, cool. Do you want me to click?
No, I'll just...
You got it? So, what is punk?
You wanna play the video?
Yeah.
Give me a second. Sorry, guys.
That's the lead singer of Bad Brains. Wonderful shirt I'm wearing here. That was my introduction into punk, the first punk band that I became conscious of. But what he says there, you probably didn't understand him. Don't care what you may say, we got that attitude. Don't care what you may do, we got that attitude. That attitude, my friends, exemplifies the spirit of punk, a fierce declaration of empowerment and individuality. Next slide. But what led to the emergence of this movement? Before the mid-1970s, America was experiencing a crucible of musical, cultural, and political changes. The landscape was dominated by rock and roll, which exploded in the 1950s, 1960s with icons like Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, and the Beatles. However, by the late 60s, rock had become overly elaborate and commercialized, drifting into psychedelic and progressive genres. The counterculture movement, symbolized by festivals like Woodstock in 1969, initially offered an alternative. You guys familiar with Woodstock? You guys are from New York, upstate, yeah. Yet, as idealism waned, discontent crept in, laying the groundwork for punk. Garage rock and proto-punk bands. Anybody know what proto-punk is? It's kind of what laid the groundwork for the attitude of punk. A lot of bands were, before they had the name for punk, these were bands that were already punk without even knowing it. And those bands were like the Kingsmen, the Stooges, who delivered a raw sound, paving the way for what was to come, the Kinks, who contributed their defiant spirit, while the band Death, comprised of black musicians, defied genre expectations with their unique blend of hard rock and punk. Other notable acts like the MC5, the New York Dolls, whose flamboyant style left a lasting impact on punk's aesthetic, Patti Smith, who merged her poetry with rock and kind of challenged the gender norms, while Richard Hell of television and the Voidoids revolutionized punk fashion with ripped t-shirts, safety pins, and spiked hair, influencing the movement's identity. So we have this standpoint. So now we move into the cultural and political influence. There's a reason why this exploded. It's kind of a holistic thing that made this explosion of the punk soundtrack and the punk attitude. So culturally, this era was marked by significant social movements. There was the civil rights, anti-war protest, and women's liberation. That inspired a generation to question authority, fight for social justice. Disillusionment with authority grew, particularly as a reaction to the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal, fueling a burgeoning anti-establishment sentiment among the youth. Politically, the Vietnam War ignited public outcry, galvanizing young people to seek new forms of expression and community economic challenges, further fueling frustration, leading to increased censorship and regulation that punk musicians would later push against, making freedom of expression central to the punk ethos. Punk is more than just music. It symbolizes a spirit of rebellion and a dynamic subculture that rejects the conformity while embracing individuality. It appeared as a powerful response to the surplus of mainstream rock and societal norms, celebrating self-expression and creativity with its distinctive fashion. Think leather jackets, torn clothes, and bold hairstyles. Punk followers wore their defiance like armor. This is a bit of a tangent, but I think the most punk act is to be punk in mind and not look punk. I think that's very punk. So let's get into the evolution of punk. Punk erupted in mid-1970s, sparking movements throughout the US and the UK. It drew from garage rock's raw energy and the inventive spirit of bands like the Velvet Underground, Andy Warhol, carving out its identity through the fierce sounds of the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, celebrated for their fast tempos and gritty melodies. Now, there's subgenres amongst punk. So, my personal favorite, I grew up in the hardcore scene. So hardcore punk is what I resonate with. You have the pop punk, Just think Blink-182, Green Day. And then you have post-punk, which I also like as well. Let's see, we could say Talking Heads kind of fits in that post-punk feel. It's a little bit more palatable. So each of these subgenres and elements preserved the core ethos of Defiance. This DIY approach empowered artists to self-produce and establish independent labels, allowing punk's political voice to boldly address issues of war, poverty, and injustice. That's interesting. There's something happening here. There's community. Even though these folks feel so marginalized from a bigger scale of community, they're starting to develop their own communities. The other interesting thing is just about a 20-minute subway ride from CBGB's in the Bronx, hip-hop is coming up simultaneously. That's interesting. Another art form of rebellion and not conforming. So how does this all connect to me? Marcus Garvey once said, "A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." So let's connect punk to my roots. My journey into punk and nonconformity began with the influence of jazz. My great-grandfather, Lawrence Arthur Speed Webb, was a jazz drummer and band leader in the late 1920s, leading groups like Speed Webb and his Malady Lads. He also had a band. This is how my family even got to Los Angeles. He played for the Hollywood Blue Devils, and they did a lot of the early Hollywood scores. It's like one of the first big band, like black big band jazz bands to do it. That was a source of rebellion. Jazz, a rebellion of its own, challenged social norms and racial boundaries through music. Emerging from African-American communities, jazz broke from tradition, embracing improvisation, syncopation, capturing the vibrant spirit of the Roaring '20s. Icons like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday pushed artistic boundaries while infusing their work with personal and political messages. Jazz clubs became spaces for diverse audiences, promoting unity and cultural exchange, ultimately laying the groundwork for future musical movements, what I'd call proto-punk. So again, there's a huge urgency for community. And jazz was doing that, kind of laying that groundwork. I was raised primarily by my mother and my grandparents, so my maternal side. My grandfather was the son of Speed Webb, I was telling you about, the drummer. My grandfather had a very interesting side, a subgenre that he would listen to within jazz. It was more of the avant-garde jazz type, so the Sun Ra's, Don Cherry's, John Coltrane. John Coltrane is, if you don't know, is the godfather, the creator of spiritual jazz, which is like another way of being punk because it didn't conform to bebop or the other ways of playing jazz. So this nourished a consciousness in me of artistic journey and with unconventional figures who inspired me to think outside the box. There's a clip of Sun Ra. This guy does not look like a jazz cat, what you would typically think is a jazz cat. So that brings me to jazz-punk connection. That makes no sense to you, right? Do you guys think of punk when you think of jazz? No? Yeah, see? Now, there is a fascinating connection between jazz and punk. Relationships that reveal how two seemingly distinct genres share a deep-rooted spirit of rebellion. So there lies that. The originality and innovation. While jazz and punk may appear worlds apart, the threads connected with the threads connecting them run deep, influencing musicians and movements across the generations. Let's start with rhythm. So this is very interesting. In hardcore punk, there's blast beats, but blast beats come from jazz drumming easily. So I don't know if you can play that clip.
It's the guy with the metal clips in his hair.
No, that was Sun Ra.
Oh, that was Sun Ra.
Yeah. I could mic it up to this if you want, yeah. So that's Art Blakely. And then this is hardcore drumming. It's very closely linked. Drummers like Art Blakely, who you saw in that first clip, showcased how rhythm could be both powerful and expressive, setting the stage for punk drummers to push boundaries further. There's a lot of, drummers across genres, they're big students of jazz drumming because of how technical and how, it's insane. It sounds like they have 5 limbs, when they're playing. So they're always studying jazz drummers. Let's take a moment to delve into the spirit of revolution that defines both jazz and punk. Jazz emerged as a powerful response to societal constraints during the Harlem Renaissance. You guys familiar with the Harlem Renaissance? Powerful movement. Boldly breaking down racial barriers and creating spaces for unity. It celebrated individuality, where musicians took risk and defied norms. Sounds oddly like punk. Now look at punk. It arose as a fierce protest against the excesses of mainstream music and culture in the 1970s. Punk embraced rawness and authenticity, actively rejecting polished production for gritty, unfiltered sounds. Both genres share a common goal: to challenge the status quo and create something entirely new. It's this revolutionary spirit that connects them. I guess we can get into the aesthetics. The aesthetics of both genres reflect this defiant spirit. Now, people might look at jazz musicians presently, they might look back at a photo of John Coltrane or Miles Davis and say, they don't look that different. But you have to realize that these are young black youth looking very sophisticated. So their way of rebelling was, to don themselves in, very expensive looking clothing. So that was their way of being defiant. The stereotype of the black youth was not that really. While simultaneously defying societal expectations, in contrast, punk fashion, think leather jackets, ripped jeans, and bold hairstyles, serves as a visual declaration of non-conformity. Yet both styles convey messages of individuality, self-expression, challenging the status quo and making statements. There's that photo. No, before, sorry. Yeah. The black and white photo, what does that seem? That doesn't seem very jazz-like to you, does it? So that's Don Cherry. He's a avant-garde trumpeter. And then to the right of him, or I guess it'd be your left, is a punk singer. So they look alike, right? Different eras, but they are both expressing themselves. Let's not overlook avant-garde jazz musicians like Sun Ra and Don Cherry, who embodied punk ethos long before punk was even a concept. Sun Ra's cosmic philosophy and experimental sound pushed the boundaries of jazz. So there were little punks even within jazz, inviting listeners to explore new dimensions of music and art. His flamboyant fashion and theatrical performance directly challenged established standards, reflecting the punk spirit that would follow. So that was Don Cherry I was talking about in that previous photo. but his visionary approach to world music and anomalous instrumentation illustrated freedom and quest. Now we can get into language. Language is often a huge part of a community. The language and slang of both jazz and punk reveal a shared ethos. Jazz musicians crafted unique lexicons reflecting their experience and ideation. I heard somewhere, and it may or may not be true, but everybody says cool, right? That comes from the jazz cats. Before that, it wasn't really a thing of, oh, that's cool. It's more to represent the temperature of something. So jazz musicians crafted unique lexicons reflecting their experiences and ideation, while punk developed its language rooted in raw honesty and defiance. So some of you guys have been on Pinterest probably, and you see DIY this, DIY that. That's a very punk thing. It's something that punks were saying back in the 70s. It's not a new thing. So. She has to go to the airport, everyone. Improvisational spirit, where musicians often created spontaneously, free from traditions, the connection highlights how both genres communicate their contrary identities through their distinctive language. So we'll get into my discovery of punk. It was a massive light bulb for me. A huge revelation. Much like my revelation of being a runner, it actually happened on the same land. I was 13 in the Mojave Desert, and I remember sitting on my friend's floor, and his dad had a record player. And these are probably his dad's records, but the first time he put on Bad Brains, it was from the album Band in DC. I was just like, my ears were mesmerized, and I wanted to know more. But upon picking up the record and flipping it over, I saw that there were these 4 black men. And I was blown away. I had no idea. That was not, I'm from Inglewood, California originally. Within Inglewood, California, it was just like, there wasn't a whole lot of punk representation, or there was, I had seen a few Chicano kids that were punk, but it didn't really penetrate that that's what it was. But to see these guys that don't really look punk, they look more Rastafarian, which they were. They just look more normie or whatever. I was just like, oh, okay. These guys speak my language. I had found what I had been searching for. That summer became the summer of punk. For me, I studied everything from Black Flag to post-punk bands like ESG. I discovered black punks. At the same time, I found trail running, my form of revolt that resonated with DIY mindset. Trail running is the ultimate punk thing you can do. Like it's doesn't conform to, and nothing against road runners, but there's this non-conformity thing of off the beaten path. Let me get out here. Let me get out to the trail. Let me just pick my own path. Let me run up this random mountain. There's not a whole lot of trail clubs for that reason too, I think. You automatically, as a trail runner, just have this very off the beaten path, non-conformity mindset. So I ran and fell deeply in love with the rhythm of it all, akin to the energy I felt both in jazz and punk. So as I was saying, both punks and trail runners carve their paths, literally and figuratively, finding community in the process. At the age of 15, when my family moved to Seattle, I discovered a vibrant community that embraced both my love for music and the outdoors. Seattle had amazing all-ages music venues where I could listen and play shows. So I began playing music myself. That's the thing about punk too. It's very it's a very amateur thing. You kind of grow into it. None of us knew how to play our instruments. It was just kind of like off of pure feeling and oh, that sounds good. That kind of conveys what I'm feeling inside. So I began to be a part of the hardcore and punk scene in Seattle, and I was able to also do my running, which those two worlds did not collide. Like let me tell you, like it wasn't back in the day. It wasn't really accepted for someone to be a quote unquote athlete. I don't consider myself an athlete too, and I always tried to convey that to my close friends who knew that I was running. But back in the day, being a punk rock kid or a hardcore punk kid, and then hitting the trail was like kind of off kilter. Although there were some dudes that were hitting the weights pretty hard in the hardcore scene. Now I think about it, but they weren't considered jocks for some reason. I could listen to and play shows outside the teen centers were endless trails providing opportunities to conceptualize writing and further discover myself. So at this point in my teens, I really honed in on writing, and I found that I could utilize trail running to conceptualize whether I was writing lyrics or just writing something in my journals. It's the freedom of trail running, and I encourage you, if you do trail run, to do it without headphones. Like, see what your mind's telling you. Listen to what the soundtrack of life is telling you. You might figure something out. Even in trail running, an often white-dominated space, I found myself rebelling against the conventional image of what a trail athlete looks like. So while, trail running is there's few and far between a lot of dudes that look like me, there's also my own community kind of being like, what the hell is that about? Why? You should be playing basketball. You should be running track and field. You should be doing this and that. And them telling me that, both sides, or me feeling that sentiment of, wow, I'm the only one that looks like me towing this line, gave me further fuel to be like, I'm punk. I don't conform to what you think or what this looks like. It took years of growth and confidence to cultivate a community that embraces diversity and creativity. I would bravely take on the moniker Trail Dancer, a title that reflects the spirit of freedom, individuality, inherent in both punk and trail running. I also started recently a trail running crew. I refuse to put the club in there, some more non-conformity. And we call ourselves the Shoegazers, which, I don't think there would be any shoegaze music. Is anybody familiar with shoegaze music? Yeah. I don't think that there would be any shoegaze music without punk, or maybe even jazz for that matter. So there's still a bit of punk in that title, but there's also punk in that title because there's not a whole lot of running crews that are naming themselves such as shoegazers. So yeah, Shoegazers was crafted for, but not limited to, unconventional trail runners to connect, trail dance, and embrace their authenticity while exploring the portals throughout the trail to ignite their creativity. Anybody run? Yeah. Do you feel creative when you run? Not at all. Yeah. Do you on the trail?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of in the moment.
I do a lot of thinking on that, especially climbing on trails.
Yeah.
working stuff out.
Interesting. And you run
Trail also.
trail as well.
Mostly.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of like single mind to just do well and finish.
Yeah.
And I really kind of amped myself up for that runner's high. I really love that.
Ah, fascinating.
That first 10 minutes of when you're done. It's just like what I run for.
So post run is where it comes in.
Post
You're like,
run is like creative fuel times
Yeah.
10 for me. Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So as I reflect on my journey, I recognize that punk is about forging our paths, building community, and celebrating the uniqueness within each of us. It mirrors my discovery of trail running, where I found others like me forging their own trails. Punk signifies the spirit of rebellion, creativity, and authenticity that transcends music. There's this video. The way that I really try to convey trail running, I mean, you could see the example in this video. It's just non-traditional. I kind of steer away from a lot of the granola approach of things, and it's more dynamic. It does have that punk ethos of rhythm and kind of causing a disturbance. So this is a video that I wrote the script and I came up with the concept for Arcturix, and it's me trail dancing.
I'm talking terrestrial locomotion, trail dancing, shoegazing, you know the type, lost in the rhythm, staring down, shifted stone, fixated on their own worn out shoes. This ain't just a dance, it's a raw expression. You can do it like it's a great weight on you, or you can do it like it's part of a dance. Be here now! And welcome out to the off-beat course. Be a zigzag wonder. Forget the straight lines. Zigzag.
Forget the straight lines, zigzag. I mean, you can keep going.
Is that looking good?
No, Griffith Park.
Move with the circumference. Feel the art. Dance like nobody's watching. Dance on the descent.
So that's pretty much it. So with that being said, and thank you for bearing with my nervousness up here, I urge each of you to celebrate your selfhood.
Hey!
Hey. Defy the ordinary and let your punk spirit enlighten others. I hope I gave you something today.